All right, Donald Trump saying he's looking forward to November 5th. Looks like he's going to say some.
Somebody just say, who'd you vote for? Yeah, I voted for Donald Trump. Thank you.
All right, sometimes he might say something else.
All right, folks. So, when Nikki Haley dropped out of the Republican primary, I really thought that would be the last that we largely speak of her. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still view her as a neocon loser, but at that point she became an irrelevant neocon loser, right? We largely have a bigger fish to fry, and that is Joe Biden in the November election. But despite the fact that she has dropped out of the race, despite the fact that she herself has largely gone silent since then, she's hiding in her hole, she's crying in the corner over there, her prominent supporters have not stopped. Okay, they are continuing to take the opportunity to follow in the footsteps of their dear leader by continuing to claim victory or claim that Donald Trump is losing, despite the fact that he already has secured the GOP nomination and also won last night's, I guess you could call it, Super Tuesday 3 primaries by a pretty large margin. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's video, but let me just say here to open that to you guys out there, and yes, I'm looking at you particularly at Team Nikki Haley HQ on Twitter over here. Let me tell you a little something about life, all right? This is not expressly political, but it applies 100% to this situation. One of the, I think, most overused slogans sometimes that you hear is the phrase, never give up. Right? Never give up, always, keep trying, all that stuff. And don't get me wrong, while I think usually there is a high degree of virtue in that, at Team Nikki Haley, let me just let you in on a little secret here. There comes times in life where it actually is time to give up. Okay? There is actually sometimes a virtue in admitting either that you lost this battle or this is not feasible. And instead of being stubborn, instead of letting pride and ego get the better of you, sometimes exercising a little bit of humility and simply admitting that you lost this round, you shut up, maybe you try again at something else. But truly, I say that because it's one of the most overrated phrases in some instances like this, never give up. No, sometimes in life, nobody likes a sore loser. Sore losers get laughed at. They are respected by nobody. And that is exactly what many prominent Nikki Haley influencers are out here doing. So let's get into today's video. But shortly, for context, if you were not following, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because the primary is over. There's not much to talk about here. But last night was what I guess you could call Super Tuesday 3. There were primaries in, I believe, Florida, Ohio, Arizona, Illinois, and I believe one other state, Kansas. That's the other state that I'm missing there. And it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, but Donald Trump swept all of those primaries massively. As a matter of fact, basically the normal number he got last night was about 80%. Okay, so he got, give or take, about 80% of the vote in every single one of these states. Now, normally you would think that getting 80% in any type of election here is huge, right? What candidate out there could possibly complain that they're getting 80% in a primary? Even if Donald Trump were an uncontested incumbent, which we'll kind of discuss a little bit later in the video, that would still be at least a pretty decent showing. But despite the fact that, again, Trump got 80%, despite the fact that in Florida and Ohio specifically, Nikki Haley got absolutely destroyed, and that shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, she freaking dropped out after all. That has not stopped, again, the Nikki Haley supporters from continuing to cope here. So I want to read this one tweet here because it's just amazing. At Team Nikki Haley, which considers itself to be, quote, unaffiliated supporters of the Nikki Haley campaign, although I have my questions there, but whatever. They went out in the middle of this election and said, look at Shelby County, Ohio. Okay, so never mind the fact that Trump the entire night was winning by about 60 points over you. No, in Shelby County, Ohio, one county here, folks, they're saying that with 51.4% of the vote in, hey, look, Nikki Haley is winning, right? Nikki Haley, 47%, Donald Trump, 17%. And they're like, yes, we won this. Haha, screw you, Donald Trump. you may have destroyed us in the Republican primary, but the fact we won one county, hooray! See, this is proof there is a wide-scale rebellion against Donald Trump, and Nikki Haley is the future. Except newsflash, all right? Again, that was with 51% of the vote in. Do we want a little update? Let's do a little update here. Yeah, Donald Trump won every single county in the state of Ohio. So I gave you the shot. Now this is the chaser. There is a map of last night's results in the Ohio primary. And as you can see here, again, every single county is red. Trump got around 80%. And that includes Shelby County. Okay, the county they're saying, hey, look, Nikki Haley's winning. First of all, I'm told it was a tabulation error that showed those results to begin with, so they weren't even showing real results. But triumphantly, we're winning Shelby County. Wah, 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 wah. Nope, I guess not. But obviously, when you are a rabid anti-Trumper, and that's what most of these all of these Nikki Haley influencers, and frankly, a lot of the DeSantis influencers on Twitter as well. I mean, I'm sure there are legitimate conservatives who supported Ron DeSantis and will be supporting Donald Trump in the primary, in the general election, I should say. But there's no denying that there are a lot of people on Twitter who supported him just because they were anti-Trumpers, and you're seeing that now, right? You're seeing, we're going to boycott Trump. We can't stand MAGA. We're the real conservatives or whatever. And when you are one of those type of people, I guess anything you can claim against Donald Trump, you will do. So even in an election where he gets 80% of the vote across the board and completely sweeps and destroys everyone, you got to find a way to spin it. Okay, so only they would look at a map like this. Again, that is all red. That is all solid red for Donald Trump, and say, tonight was a defeat for Donald Trump. And it is not just the Nikki Haley HQ account who's saying that. Check out this guy, Kyle Sweetser, who is a very big and quite obnoxious Nikki Haley surrogate on Twitter here. Listen to what he said, okay? I'm gonna listen to what he said. I'll show you the screenshot he posted, and you can decide for yourself how stupid or brain dead you think these people are. Okay, from Kyle, it says, Trump is performing horrible in Florida. So you may be asking, Vince, but you just said Trump swept every single state, getting 80% of the vote. How can he say Trump is doing horrible in Florida? Well, again, this is the spin that the Nikki Haley team is still out here trying to do. It says, Nikki Haley is polling around 150,000 votes in the Florida primary, and she dropped out weeks ago. Once MAGA is defeated this year, Nikki Haley will be the clear choice to lead the party moving forward. Hashtag Nikki Haley 2028. Yeah, I have my serious doubts about that. But whatever, let's put that aside. I'm really more so fixated on that first comment here, right? Quote unquote, Trump is performing horrible in Florida. Okay, well, let's scroll down to these results and see if Donald Trump performed horribly, quote unquote, in Florida last night. And keep in mind, this right here is what he posted. Okay, he chose willingly to post this screenshot. This is not me going and finding my own results or whatever. No, he posted this. According to him, again, these are the Nikki Haley influencers on Twitter that even after the death of her campaign are still out. You know, they're political ghosts in the graveyard just saying, whoa, 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 Donald Trump bad. Okay, in the results right here he posted, Donald Trump, 80.2% of the vote, gains all of the 125 delegates. Nikki Haley, 14.5%. Chat, am I the only one who looks at that and thinks, what the heck are you talking about? You lost by over 60 points. Donald Trump gets 80% of the vote, and your only foregone conclusion seeing that is that Trump did horribly in the election? I'm sorry, what planet are these people living on? On what planet does winning an election, getting 80% of the vote, really under any circumstances, frankly, constitute a striking defeat against your campaign? Well, folks, the argument that a lot of the Nikki Haley people, including Kyle here, are making largely is they're saying, well, it's because everyone else dropped out, right? So Donald Trump, this is what they're saying. They're saying Donald Trump is basically running uncontested, unopposed, and still 20% of, this is what they're saying, only 20% of the GOP did not vote for him. This means people don't support him for real. You know, if you're running unopposed because everyone else dropped out, you should be getting 100% of the vote. And frankly, if Donald Trump doesn't get 100% of the vote, they're still going to say, oh, Trump only got 99.9%. This proves that Donald Trump is not popular as a candidate. It's like, first of all, no. But let's break that down actually and legitimately. Here's the problem largely with that argument, okay? There's two things to say. First and foremost, you say, well, look at all these people who voted for Nikki Haley even though she dropped out. Well, it's important to point out here, folks, that early voting, okay, because this is how elections work very often, early voting has been going on for a couple of weeks now in most of these states. Florida is certainly one of them. So that also means largely a lot of the people here who have voted for Nikki Haley voted either before she dropped out or even maybe after she dropped out, but they didn't hear about it or it was just like a whatever thing. I mean, after all, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, if you go fill out the ballot, right, every single one of these people were still on the ballot. And so obviously they still do have some supporters. Someone is going to vote for them. So that's reason number one why I find that argument to be just so unbelievably stupid. But also reason number two here, because again, this is the argument they're saying is, well, if Donald Trump, you know, if there's no other candidates, then that shows he's unpopular. Well, no, it's just not true, right? Because very often, even after you might ask, right, what's the historical precedent? Does it usually go like that? Because very often, yes, in most primary cycles, you do get to a point eventually where one person is the presumptive candidate, and so therefore everyone else drops out. So what do those elections look like? Okay, so here's a very interesting and relevant question, because the Nikki Haley people, some of the DeSantis people, they want to continue lying to you about this. So let's go back into history. Let's go back into the empirical data of when this has happened in the past, where he's the only guy on the ballot. What do those elections look like? Okay, so shout out to @William Taftstan for posting this on Twitter. But check this out. Okay, so here are the results for the people bringing up this argument of Trump in 2016 after everyone else dropped out. So if you'll remember, that was a very contentious primary. You still had Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, John Kasich, Jeb Bush, was still technically in it. Okay, so check it out. So June 7th, 2016, these were some of those results here. As you can see, Donald Trump got 303 delegates, but check this out. Again, same situation. This is when everyone else already dropped out. He got 75% of the vote in California, 74% in Montana, 80% in Jersey, 71% in New Mexico, and 67% in South Dakota. Okay? So if you're bad at math there, what that means is that in 2016, under the same situation where he's now running unopposed, as compared to 2024, this past year, Trump is actually doing a lot better than that because he's clearing 80% in basically all of these other remaining primaries. Again, back in 2016, you know, it was close, but he was getting 74%, 67%. And I will remind everyone, he won that election in November. Okay, but you may look at that election and say, okay, that's just Trump. What's the historical precedent here overall? Well, in 2020, if you'll remember back then, when Bernie Sanders dropped out, but he was still on the ballot, right? And Joe Biden was basically running quote unquote uncontested in the remaining primaries here. As you can see, similar result, Bernie continued to get 10 to 30% of the vote. And in 2012, Romney was still getting 70 to 80% only after everyone withdrew. 2000, George Bush hovers around 80% when everyone else left. 1988, Bush only got 70 to 80%. The examples here go on. This is again all to say that no, Nikki Haley supporters, you cannot claim that this is a defeat for Donald Trump because he was, quote, only getting 80% when he was running unopposed. Because again, when you go back and look at the past situations where this has happened, and I'll keep on scrolling here just so you can see, this is what always happens. And as a matter of fact, 80% as compared to the historical precedent here with some of these past candidates is actually a very strong number there. Okay. So seriously, I will go back to the original point I made in the beginning of this video, which is sometimes there is a virtue to not sounding like a sore loser. Okay, which is exactly what you are. Sometimes there's a virtue in just being quiet and shutting up, because you guys right now just sound really stupid. You sound really bitter. You sound really scorned. Move on from it, okay? Because outside of your little clique, outside of your little cult, you are not convincing any American in this country that getting 80% of the vote in a primary when you are not the incumbent, and Donald Trump is not an incumbent, okay, I will clarify that in a second, is a bad situation. But of course, some people will turn to me and say, no, but Donald Trump is effectively an incumbent. And this is the argument that actually Nikki Haley herself made on the campaign trail. And I think Ron DeSantis at times entertained a little bit as well, which is essentially where they said, well, yeah, Donald Trump is winning by like 20 to 30 points in all of these primaries, but he is kind of an incumbent. Right? Republican voters see him as an incumbent, and therefore, if you were an incumbent president only winning by 20 to 30, that's actually a very weak incumbency status, right? You're actually in trouble. And so this is what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, Trump is an incumbent, so why isn't he getting 90 to 95% of the vote? Except the problem with that argument, let's break that down. First and foremost is Donald Trump's not an incumbent. He is not a sitting president running for re-election. That's just not what he is. And so as much as you want to say Trump is an incumbent, by definition, strike one, and it should be strike three there, actually, he's just not, okay? Now, with that said, I will say, do I understand the argument somewhat? Yes, I do, right? That many Republican voters do effectively see Donald Trump as the incumbent president still, and that's why he's getting bigger numbers. But at the same time, yes, while that is much of the Republican Party also does not see Donald Trump as an incumbent. I mean, it really is that simple, right? He's not an incumbent. Some people see him that way, some people don't. And so what you're getting is sort of results in the middle, right? Where this 2024 primary cycle, it wasn't totally closed. It wasn't a totally incumbent situation, but it wasn't totally open either. And that's why you got a result in the middle where, for instance, in Iowa, instead of winning by 5 points or 90 points, Trump wins by about 30, right? That's just kind of how it works, okay? Hopefully people can understand that. But again, Donald Trump's not an incumbent. Okay, you know, and another thing I'll tell you is usually with incumbents, i.e. Joe Biden right now, take a look at the fact that he's running against basically nobody. Okay, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, Jake Uyghur, you know, yeah, aka no candidates. That's usually what happens with incumbents is they run unopposed. And so the reason why they get 90% of the vote basically is because, well, nobody's really running against them, right? But Donald Trump was not in that situation. Yes, some people saw him as an incumbent, but he was not. But also, furthermore, he had to run against basically most to all of the major figures within the Republican Party, right? He had to run against Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, Tim Scott, all of these different people, instead of just some random no-name like Marianne Williamson, right? And so that's why you got the result that you got. It's not that complicated, you know, that's just how it goes. But anyways, I'm rambling at this point. I'm not even going to entertain these people anymore. The sheer fact of the matter is they're simply just bitter. They're going to make up any type of excuse in the book they can to say, whoa, this is why Donald Trump is a weak candidate. It's just a bunch of crap. I mean, what else can I say? These people are bitter. These people are scorned. These people are sore losers. And really, humbly, they should just shut up. But I don't know if they're addicted to the dopamine of the internet or something. And they can't get over it. They can't get over the Trump derangement syndrome, which in many cases is just as bad on the right as it is the left. And it is what it is. It is what it is. I try to make an outreach to these people sometimes, but you can't reason with them. And that's a problem. You can't reason with them, okay? We just sat here and cleanly debunked all the things they were saying. They were saying, well, if Trump's running unopposed, then he should be getting more than that. Okay, we just broke that down. They're still going to make the same excuses. They're still not going to listen. They're still going to say, Donald Trump sucks. And so it is what it is. It is what it is. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. What do you think of the scorned and bitter Nikki Haley supporters who are still out here to this day crying and coping and seething? And until next time, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Alpha moves only. God bless and peace.